Thornton, we're good. All right, we're going to get started. Have a roll call, please.
All right. Commissioner Barfield.
Right here.
Commissioner Merritt.
Here.
Commissioner Deloge. Commissioner Dozier. Commissioner Maddox. Commissioner Minor.
Here.
Commissioner Matlow.
Here.
Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
100.
Are there any agenda modifications?
No, sir, at this point, there are not.
Do we need an approval on the agenda?
Is she okay?
You okay? I'm fine.
She was just trying to lighten the mood, folks. This happens every meeting, every meeting. Okay, there's no public comments other than item 7B, correct?
No, sir, that's all we have.
Okay, is there a motion on consent?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, Greg?
First up, we have roll call agenda vote on Transportation Improvement Program amendments, and Mr. Burke's going to review that.
Good afternoon, members. We are here to amend the FY 2020 to FY 2024 Transportation Improvement Program to add two new projects. One is a Federal Transit Administration planning grant, as well as another is to add lighting on Monroe Street from Falk Drive south to Thomasville Road to actually add some pedestrian safety lighting.
Excellent. Is there a motion on? Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor?
This will be a roll call vote.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Barfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Merritt.
Aye.
Commissioner Dozier.
Aye.
Commissioner Minor.
Aye.
Commissioner Matlow.
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson.
Aye.
Unanimously passes.
Thank you.
Commissioner, up on item 7A is our corridor report for the Southwest Area Transportation Plan. Mr. Castrua has been managing this project for us. I'm going to turn it over to him and then ultimately over to a presentation from Kimley Horn. Yes, this would be an action
To
item.
accept it?
Yes, sir.
It's not a roll call.
No.
Commissioners, we've been working on the Southwest Area Transportation Plan for almost 2 years now. You were presented the Orange Avenue component back in April for approval, and we're bringing back to you the South Lake Bradford, Spring Hill Road, and North Lake Bradford components. And I don't want to kind of detail too much because I'm sure Richard has a lot of that same information in the presentation, so I'll turn that over to Richard Barr from Kimley Horn.
Good afternoon. Richard Barr with Kimley Horn. We were here a few months ago to talk about the Orange Avenue part of the Southwest Area Transportation Plan. And we're going to go back a little bit and talk a little more about that, just to give you a frame of reference, because I want to talk about the whole plan together now that we've finished the other quarters.
Can't read that fast.
Any questions?
Any questions?
I read the packet, so I'm ready.
Okay. So as Jack mentioned, we've started working on this end of 2017.
I think this is a day of technical difficulty
Yeah.
for some reason.
And since then we have done a lot of data collection. We've had a lot of public outreach, and we're here to present the whole plan to you today. As a reminder, this is the Southwest Area Transportation Plan corridors. Orange Avenue from Capitol Circle Southwest to Monroe Street. South Lake Bradford, North Lake Bradford, and Spring Hill Road or makes up the corridors in the Southwest Plan. As a reminder, the purpose of this project and this plan is to develop corridor plans that enhance safety, mobility, and connectivity in the southwest area of Tallahassee and Leon County. By doing so, we want to make sure we preserve the character of the neighborhoods, environmental features as well. This is based on data and analysis, and we considered strongly a lot of public output and stakeholder input that we got throughout the project. This chart shows you kind of where we've been, where we are. I'm not going to go through this because it's part of the presentation of the different elements of that. But again, we had a lot of public input, stakeholder interviews up front, data analysis, and took us all the way through the planning stages for each of these corridors. And we had an open house last month to look at all the different alternatives throughout the plan. So as part of this study, there were several things that we considered. One was the PD&E study that DOT took on after we started our study. Orange Avenue is a state road. They started studying this in October of 2018. We wanted to make sure that we had some input into that study early on. So we accelerated the Orange Avenue part of our study to make sure that we had the proper input locally. July of this year, we met with DOT, provided all the input, provided the public outreach comments, and it sounded like it was a good meeting, and they still have a ways to go. They will finish their PD&E late next year. So we broke the study into Phase 1 and Phase 2, Phase 1 being Orange Avenue, and then Phase 2 being the North Lake Bradford, South Lake Bradford, and Spring Hill Road portions. The project phases, again, the green is the Orange Avenue, and the purple being the other corridors that we studied. Also, as part of this study, the Blueprint IA board approved a major amendment to the Airport Gateway project. They brought in and identified funding for the Airport Gateway that included Spring Hill Road, North Lake Bradford, South Lake Bradford, part of Orange Avenue, and plus a new corridor that connects Orange Avenue to North Lake Bradford, also known as the FSU Road by some. So this is the map that shows in yellow the overlap or the corridors that are part of the Airport Gateway. The blue corridors are a part of our study, the Southwest Plan. So the Southwest Area Transportation Plan did not specifically study the new corridor. I mentioned the outreach that we took on. Along with our project team, we reached out to local agencies, DOT, to get guidance and participation with other agencies to make sure we understood what plans are coming along, get technical advice and that type of thing. We also had a number of stakeholder meetings early on in the study to identify plans in the area, plans in the community, issues in the Southwest area part of Tallahassee and Leon County. Got some great input from the stakeholders. In addition, we had a number of neighborhood association meetings to identify specific issues in the neighborhoods and who better to understand what those issues are than the locals that live in the area and work in the area. We also had 2 district forums focusing on each of the corridors. The first forum was to identify the existing conditions, the projections from a traffic standpoint, looking at crash data and analysis. In the second forum for each of the corridors, we looked at the different alternatives, improvement alternatives that we have come up with. You see a box there. Over 200 citizens have attended the public outreach events, which we think was very strong. Throughout the project, we kept up with all the different issues that were identified. I'm not going to go through all this, but a lot is happening in the Southwest area part of town, Leon County and Tallahassee. So Phase 1, Orange Avenue, I'm just going to touch on some things that we had talked about before. Our traffic analysis actually showed an improvement need, 4-lane need, during the study period. On the west side, Capitol Circle to South Lake Bradford, approximately South Lake Bradford, we saw capacity being exceeded by year 2045. From South Lake Bradford to Spring Hill Road, a little earlier need, 2040. And then from Spring Hill Road to Wanish Way, it's currently exceeding capacity. Now, I mentioned that DOT is doing their own PD&E or detailed study now. They will be looking at that more closely as well. Some of the things that we heard from the public on Orange Avenue, pedestrian crossings near neighborhoods, schools, continuous bike facilities were identified, and sidewalks along Orange Avenue, certainly needed. A large majority of the citizens, when they mentioned bike and ped facilities, they mentioned a shared use path off-road, although we did hear some bicyclists prefer an on-road, but the majority of citizens that we heard from wanted an off-road shared use path. And then, of course, transit facilities can be improved in this area as well. Here's a rendering in the rural area of Orange Avenue. This is the western end of Orange Avenue. Closer to Capitol Circle, we're showing 4 lanes. In this case, we are not showing an on-road bike area. Although if there's enough right-of-way, having a shared use path and an on-road bike facility would be certainly good. And this is the suburban rendering that we had. The only difference here is the landscaping is a little different. So next steps by DOT, they'll be finishing their PD&E.
Can you go back to that?
Sure.
Is that the area between Spring Hill and, what's that segment? You say suburban?
This is near Spring Hill Road, and to the east. Obviously, you need to, yeah.
So it's Spring Hill to Wanish Way?
Yes.
Okay. And the other part, was that the same, did that cover from
Basically,
Spring Hill west?
west, yes.
So that would cover the Liberty Park neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
I can't imagine how you're going to do something like that in that tight space without taking homes and businesses.
This is close to the existing right-of-way.
Yeah?
DOT, I said, is studying this in more detail, what can be afforded and what can be actually built from a bike ped, multimodal standpoint.
Okay. Yeah, I just have a concern about, because I know it is tight in that area from Spring Hill, essentially just past the Liberty Park.
Right, yeah, the right-of-way varies
Neighborhood.
throughout this area, and a lot of it, yeah, I totally agree with you that the homes, the first slide I showed, almost the first slide I showed, we want to make sure we preserve the neighborhoods.
Right.
And that was certainly a goal of ours.
Okay. Because there are homes almost literally right on Orange Avenue right now.
Yeah.
And so with this kind of expansion, I mean, I would certainly want us to, and I know you said you did the neighborhood talks, but I don't know if they knew that this was going to be the implication of what could happen to their neighborhood. So I think we need...
Like I said, DOT is studying this now.
Okay.
There's more public involvement going to continue.
Okay.
And CRTPA will be providing input to that plan as well. I mean, a great comment, though.
Right, okay.
So the next steps by DOT, finishing the PD&E study next year. Again, determining the feasibility of the multimodal system. Can we fit that in? To your point. And the design and right-of-way of this project is a ways out. There's no funding for design or construction of Orange Avenue. So getting to phase 2, the Spring Hill Road, North Lake Bradford, South Lake Bradford corridors. First, Spring Hill Road. Now, this is part of the airport gateway. Our traffic studies show that we will not be exceeding capacity by 2045, the 2-lane capacity. The count out there right now is about 6,400 cars a day. The capacity, the two-lane capacity, is about 14,000. So we're well short of that today, and our projections are by 2045, or it's not going to reach that. But we do understand that the Blueprint IA is looking to go ahead and get out there ahead of time and purchase right away with that project as part of the gateway. So a lot of the citizen input, pedestrian improvements, bike ped facilities, safety improvements is certainly a big thing that was talked about. And we did hear input about Spring Hill Road wanting that to be a 4-lane road for safety reasons, for a number of reasons that they wanted 4 lanes. Here's a cross-section or a rendering that we put together with Spring Hill Road as a 2-lane road with expanded right-of-way. On either side, on either side of the travel lanes, you see a large swale. We'll be able to accommodate the future 4-laning in the future on the outside lanes, on the outside of the travel lanes. And then a multi-use path is on the outside, and a sidewalk on the other side. Yes, ma'am.
Are both of those multi-use paths on each side?
There's a sidewalk on one side and a multi-use path on the other, is what we're showing. And again, if there's enough right-of-way for a bike lane on the road, then we need to identify that as a...
Just speaking on personal preference, I would much rather have a multi-use lane instead of on the shoulder.
Yeah, and that's what we heard from the area for all these quarters, actually, but we did hear from a handful that wanted their bike lanes on the road.
Understand?
Well, Commissioner, if I could, that'll be part of the PD&E as well, because, if you come in with a multi-use path and bike lanes on the travel lanes, that's another 15 or so feet. Mr. Richard, go back to your point, so that's part of the things that they'll evaluate as part of the PD&E.
Or a combination of it. You could circle in and out, but where available, multi-use and go in.
What happened to the 4-lane option? We're not going to take questions from the audience, Bill.
So this rendering was from the Blueprint early option that was from 2 or 3 years ago. That showed actually an expansion of. It shows the 2 lanes, travel lanes, and it shows the expansion, a possible expansion on the inside of the travel lanes and bike lanes on the road is what we want to be able to show what was actually shown a couple or 3 years ago from Blueprint. This is the section that's existing 4 lanes today, basically from the north of Orange Avenue. Again, it shows pedestrian sidewalks on either side, landscaping, and again, this can be more detailed looked into when further study is made. So North Lake Bradford, we are showing some capacity issues out into the planning frame of 2045. A lot of the capacity issues today are there are a lot of crashes actually on this stretch of roadway because there's a 5-lane section, 2 lanes, and then a middle turn lane. A lot of conflict points, and as a result, a number of accidents over the last few years. Now, DOT is doing a resurfacing project in 2022, and as part of that, we understand they're going to be doing an access management study to see how to control that access. Certainly, the businesses along there will be affected positively, and in their minds, maybe negatively, and that needs to be part of the whole overall access management study at that time. Needs to be a lot of input by a lot of people before access management can take place. But it can be a very positive thing to reduce those conflicts. So that's coming along in a few years. Again, this is one facility that's part of the airport gateway as well. And we would be creating medians possibly to help with refuge, pedestrian refuge, and access management opportunities. What we heard from the citizens along this stretch, improving bike and pedestrian facilities, improve access to businesses, then making the road look nicer with landscaping. Here's a rendering showing 4 lanes, multi-use path on one side and a sidewalk on the other. Now this, we are not showing a bike lane on this. It will not fit with the existing right-of-way because there's some utility conflicts. In fact, the travel lanes are not consistent today, and the sidewalk widths are not consistent today because of the utilities in and out of there. So when this is further studied, that all needs to be certainly taken into consideration. But we are showing 4 11-foot lanes, continuous lanes on this. This is the section, Orange Avenue, Spring Hill. This is the section that is a 2-lane section today that goes by Pineview Elementary that veers off to the west at Orange Avenue. Just to continue the multi-use path and sidewalk, we added that into this section. Yes.
So thank you. Just bringing together your previous comment about not enough room for bike lanes on the other section, North Lake Bradford, due to the utilities. I didn't note kind of the multi-use sidewalks. You're saying continue it up from Orange Avenue, but it would taper off at some point when it becomes too narrow? Am I hearing that right?
That's possible, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Or, yeah, that's a possibility.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, again, the preference in this whole area was to have an off multi-use trail. There's a lot of bicycle usage. There's a lot of pedestrians. And that was a a lot of input related to that. Now, South Lake Bradford, again, this is part of the airport gateway, Capitol Circle to Orange Avenue. Our traffic analysis shows that the capacity by 2045 will not be reached. In fact, the latest count we have only shows a count of 2,100 vehicles per day, well below what the capacity would be. We talked about a number of things with them about slowing the traffic down, looking at traffic calming features on how that can be done, and that will be certainly refined as part of the next phase of this project as part of the gateway. But here are some of the things that we talked about. Again, the traffic calming. They wanted to have to maintain the rural character of the corridor today. They didn't want a whole lot of landscaping, minimal is what they said, but certainly can make a road look nicer. They are certainly open to, and lighting as well, but don't overdo it, is what we heard. And then there's a school bus stop on the corridor, and certainly having a crossing from one side to the other is certainly important.
Aren't there speed humps there now?
There are speed humps there now, yeah. A number of them. We talked about a roundabout. I mentioned a roundabout. This is at the FSU reservation intersection. This is just an example of one location, a roundabout could be. Just to put this in perspective, this is about the size of the roundabout at Fleischman and Miccosukee Road, which I think functions pretty well. You see South Lake Bradford, and then the FSU reservation, Plastico Road. I mentioned the ribbon curbing. On the left-hand side is what the road looks today on South Lake Bradford. On the right-hand side is an example of a roadway with ribbon curbing. It gives the feel of that there's curb and gutter there without curb and gutter being there.
What? What did you call it?
Ribbon curbing. It's about 1.5 to 2 foot wide strip
Strip of concrete.
Concrete as opposed to asphalt, 2 different materials. It gives the feel of cars wanting to need to slow down. We are actually proposing 10.5-foot travel lanes as well.
And it's flush with asphalt?
Yes.
Well, the reason I ask that is because in Europe, they distinguish your bike lanes with a concrete curb.
Okay?
Yep, so you have your 2 lanes or your lane, you have a concrete curb, and then you have your bike lane. And they use those scooters heavily over there in their urban areas. And I like that.
We're actually showing the shared path on the outside of that.
Okay.
Buffered by
Just making my
landscaping.
comments.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the next steps by Blueprint, again, this has been a partnership with Blueprint and CRTPA. These projects that are part of the airport gateway will build upon what we've done in this study. Not starting over with public involvement, but certainly carrying forward what we've already done as part of the Southwest study. We understand that Blueprint will be looking at doing some survey work and some preliminary things end of this year, first part of next year. And understand the design and construction will be done in phases, not the whole gateway done at one time, but phased over time, with design possibly beginning late next year. Again, I mentioned public involvement throughout that project as well. And there's some opportunities with North Lake Bradford. Some of that access management implementation could take place earlier rather than later on North Lake Bradford. Then the next steps by CRTPA, I mentioned that some of these, like Orange Avenue, for instance, is not being construction and design not being constructed for a while. There are some things that can be done early on: intersection improvements, and pedestrian crossings at the school, particularly NIMS Middle School, and Liberty Park has a lot of pedestrians going back and forth across Orange Avenue. Certainly, the Star Metro can be coordinated with to improve some transit facilities, some transit routes, and then continued coordination with DOT during their PD&E study. And with that, I can open up for questions.
Go ahead.
So the question that I have is, when do you anticipate, so I live just off of Orange Avenue,
Right.
and that is a very heavily used section from Spring Hill to Wanish Way. There are lots of accidents along that stretch. And on FSU game days, traffic is routed to Orange Avenue because that's the only southern east-west corridor. So it makes it even worse on FSU game days. But I hear you saying that it's not anticipated that even that segment will be addressed for some time now. Can you talk to me about that and maybe explain why that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, today there is no construction or design money available. That has not been programmed. Mm-hmm. Now, once the PD&E is finished, that usually attracts money by DOT, and they can move that project up, and it can be a high priority as part of your local plan to move it up as well if that's so you so desire.
And when is the PD&E anticipated?
Late next year is what I understand.
Okay.
That'll be finished.
All right. I'll bide my time, but I can tell you I'm going to push for that segment to be moved up in priority because I see it every day, morning, afternoon, weekends, and that needs to be a priority segment.
Understand?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, the other thing I wanted to point out, and I am very much in favor of the pedestrian projects, the pedestrian, what do we call it, when you're going from, I'm blocking on.
Pedestrian
Crossings. Thank you, Greg. That's what happens when you get to be my age. But those are desperately needed also in front of NIMS.
Yes.
Because the kids don't go to the traffic light. I mean, we've got a crossing guard there, but they still cross midway in that area.
And we witnessed a lot of that during our study. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is something that,
And certainly at Liberty Park, because the store is across the street, and a lot of people walk across Orange Avenue to get to that store and to the bus stop, which is on the other side of Orange Avenue as well. So those are desperately needed, and as soon as possible.
yeah, and I think some of those can be moved up, certainly, and looked at.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we've talked, oh, sorry.
Kristen, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't mind waiting if this, if Greg had a comment on
Go ahead.
Commissioner's
Just
question.
quickly, yeah, we'll probably add those to our, if you remember, we have a transportation systems management priority list we do every year.
Okay.
We'll be looking to add those, because I don't think we added them, or no, we did, I'm sorry, we did add them this year, I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay.
sir. So we'll look to try to get funding for those pedestrian crossings as quickly as we can.
All right, thank you.
Good deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm actually very happy to hear that exchange. I had similar concerns. This is a transportation plan. All of us know well how long it takes.
Yeah.
And even if we have something prioritized in one of our top few spots, it may not get funding. So Orange Avenue is one of our top priorities after
Yes.
those projects that have already received construction funding. Is that correct?
It's actually, it's about number 4 on our list, I believe. It's behind the Crawfordville
After Crawford.
Highway.
After those, we already received funding for right-of-way or others?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct, yes. So I just wasn't sure, based on Commissioner Richardson's question, if we needed to reprioritize, but it sounds like the work we're doing with the PD&E and others helps position us better.
Yes, ma'am. There are steps we have to go through, and back to Commissioner Richardson's point, we're hoping to at least see design funding for some portion of this project in the upcoming 5th year. But again, remember, that's still 5 years out, so construction right away is even that much further out.
Okay.
So you all also anticipated my next question, and I should have said, Richard, great presentation. We've come a long way in a year, both Blueprint and CRTPA and FDOT, so I'm really excited, even if it may take some time. And what you just mentioned about the crosswalks, it seems like we know that it's going to take a while to get funding for construction, no matter what. If we stay on a consistent path with this, so if there is any way that DOT would allow us to look at pedestrian crossings and other types of mitigation before we get to construction, I'm really interested in that as well. So
Yes.
good line
Thank
of
you.
questions.
We've had those conversations with DOT. Remember, we've talked about it a couple of times. You know, typically the way this process would work from here is we're probably at least 15 years, if not more, before we see construction. So what we'd like to do is, as an example, is maybe target the intersection of Spring Hill and Orange Avenue as a potential kind of separate project to alleviate some of the issues there. And that might include, Commissioner Richards, some access to Liberty Park, places like that. Because if we sit here and wait for the entire project to get
Right.
done, we are numerous years out before that happens.
We needed some of those pedestrian crossings,
Yesterday.
yes.
Oh, yeah,
For a
no
long
question.
time. Well, related to that, and I feel like I'm speaking much louder than you all, so I think the tech is really working this side of the table. Richard, a question about the Lake Bradford. You talked about resurfacing and the study that FDOT was going to do for the access mitigation. Did I have that right?
Access management.
Management, thank you. Is this a process similar to what we saw on North Monroe Street, where FDOT was doing the study, but if I have this right, coming here and we could talk about some of the design elements for the medians and pedestrian crossings from Tharp through Midtown on Monroe? Is the process for Lake Bradford going to be similar? And by that I mean, might we have some input into that discussion about medians or other things we could do?
Absolutely, and that's why they're open to looking at access management during that time. They do that on a lot of the roads, especially in built times. So yeah, that's an absolutely good time to provide some input for that.
Fantastic. That just was the most closely aligned project. I know not everyone around the table was here for that, but it was a good way for us to get some design elements and community input into that. The other question I had, I guess two questions. The bike lane pedestrian issue is certainly critical. Wherever we are in capacity right now, I think we are anticipating things increasing in the future. And if people are not using riding bikes as much in the area, it's probably because of a safety issue or other factors. So I guess I'm thinking out ahead. I don't want to lose that piece of it as we go forward into the design, even if we need to get pretty creative with other property, things like that. That was just a general statement, Greg, that I'm hearing a little bit of maybe not having enough room in different places. If there's something we can look at, I know Autumn others are here, blueprint or city and county, I think that's a really critical piece to get ahead of. And then I guess I did have one question. I heard my colleague, Commissioner Proctor, sitting behind me in the audience, about the Spring Hill Road issue. So we have had discussions going back a while about 4 lanes, and I seem to remember when this study got started a year ago that you anticipated the use of the road at this point would not justify 4 lanes, and we were talking about purchasing additional right-of-way to accommodate that in the future. And I'm not sure, Greg, we discussed this in briefing, if you want me to direct this to you or Richard, but my understanding is that given funding constraints on the state side and locally, Blueprint and others, we may be better served with improving the existing, or improving a 2-lane road with multi-use trails, all of that, because any type of right-of-way acquisition and expansion in the future, we're not going to get that funded at this point anyhow. So it would draw money from other projects. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, ma'am. Going back to kind of the first part of the question, that's one of the things that we identified in terms of traffic need. We could not justify 4 lanes. But I think all of these options contemplate purchasing enough right-of-way to eventually build a 4-lane. But yes, as it stands right now, this would be entirely funded probably with Blueprint dollars, because there's not any federal dollars available for this since, the issues we're dealing with on that. But no, this contemplates an ultimate 4-lane, but again, from a traffic standpoint, we couldn't warrant 4 lanes. But as you can see in the cross sections, again, it does allow for that. And then once Blueprint gets into the more detailed survey aspects, I'm sure they'll come back to the IA with some options to how you deal with that, because you do have some areas closer up to Spring Hill that are pretty tight in terms of homes and businesses, that 100+ feet is going to be difficult to do. But again, I think that's better addressed once Blueprint gets better data than what we have, more refined data for the IA to make that final decision.
Okay, I wanted to raise the issue here just because I know it is of concern to many. I was actually going to conclude with this, that I think we would be well served, and I'm looking at Tallahassee and Leon folks here, to dig into this issue at Blueprint. It occurred to me that if we were going to move forward with building out property around the airport, for example, for commercial activity, we may project increased need for the road in 10 years that is not in our current numbers. Again, that's not necessarily a conversation here, but to me it seems like something we want to talk about at Blueprint soon, because this is a long-term planning effort. And if we're going to hit that tipping point sooner than what the study currently shows, because of additional commercial activity in that area, we're going to want to know that. So I will leave it there, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
All right. Anybody else? Is there a motion to accept the reports?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now let's move on to the easy item.
Mr. Chairman, item 7B, is the discussion of the Woodville Highway project. You all directed staff to bring this item back from our June meeting because it was a topic of discussion as part of our annual priority process. Jack's going to provide a presentation that gives you some of the history and the background of the project and give you a current status of where the project is today.
Just to remind everyone, there is no question being asked of this board on this issue. So there's no yes or no, approve, disapprove. This is a presentation. This is discussion. Now, we're going to let citizens talk, of course, but any of y'all can make a motion if you want to, but as of right now, this is not an action item. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jack.
Commissioners, so when we started this process, we wanted to take a look at all the information that we had in reporting back to you regarding the Woodville Highway widening. So there's a lot of information, detailed information in the agenda, and I've kind of consolidated that in the presentation so that we're not going to have to go through all of that all of the agenda material. Couple key points about the project itself. The project limits are from Capitol Circle Southeast to Paul Russell Road. It's not two projects, it's a single project. They don't function separately. We need to make sure that we're doing the project as a whole. Consistency with priorities is essential as we move forward with this process. Woodville Highway, believe it or not, has been in this long-range transportation plan since the 1980s. It's been in every long-range plan that I remember, going back quite a ways when I first got here. Gale Avenue in the project is the major component that is the hindrance of issues, and a lot of the related intersection problems are with Gale Avenue. The loop, as it's shown, which we'll be talking about, is the maintains an acceptable level of service beyond the horizon year of 2035. And if Woodville Highway was to be funded in the new fifth year of the work program, which we'll have a presentation next at the retreat, I believe, regarding the work program, the project wouldn't even be completed till 2028 if it's funded. So that's 18 or 19 years after we initiated this process in 2010. So going back to Orange Avenue, for example, here we are starting the PD&E, and you can only imagine that the funds being constrained the way they are, you're still looking at a long period of time for Orange Avenue. Similarly, we started this 10 years ago, and now we're looking at another 6 to 7 years to 8 years before we get to construction and finish it. As part of the corridor study, or the master plan, was an umbrella document that included the PD&E study and the corridor master plan. The corridor master plan went first in this process so that we could take a look at the options that were out there, and then we refined those as we got to the PD&E study. The objectives of the plan were to create a vision for the corridor, involve citizens in balanced land use, transportation, and environmental impacts from the corridor. So starting off with public involvement, we had a fairly extensive public involvement process. We had meetings, 5 meetings. One was a 2-day charrette that included citizens involved in taking a look at what we were proposing, and also it was really kind of geared at the front end of the project to take citizen input to see what they wanted in the corridor, and then report back as how that was incorporated into the process. Some of these other projects went beyond that, and again, as we incorporated the PD&E into the process, the concept was that as you start in the corridor study, you expand that same process into the PD&E study so that it's seamless in terms of public involvement and making sure that we're following that process all the way through. In the process as well, we met with several stakeholders to make sure that we were covering our bases with a lot of areas. We talked to schools, we talked to commissioners, we talked to economic development folks, we talked to St. Joe, we talked to bicyclists, we talked to a whole slew of professionals and what they're doing and how we're going to integrate what the plans were into that process. And again, with you all, we met 6 times. This would be the 7th time regarding Woodville Highway, starting way back with the kickoff of the corridor study and going all the way through to the PD&E, as well as the design phase of the project as well. Some of the comments that we heard in that process, and these are contained in the attachment for Woodville Highway, this is the public involvement component, that we wanted to protect neighborhoods, we needed curb and gutter, we wanted sidewalks, they needed improved capacity, better lighting, bike lanes, speeding issues, and better landscaping. So these are the things that we took from the public in the first series of meetings, and we incorporated these into the process of identifying those features as we moved along. In terms of the travel and traffic, we were taking a look at the major travel patterns throughout the corridor to make sure that we're addressing those issues. And again, you've got the movement of Woodville Highway to South Adams Street, Woodville Highway to Monroe Street, Crawfordville Road, again, to Monroe and to South Adams, again, are the major movements as you move towards the north end of the corridor. Again, incorporating all the traffic movements that are associated with Capitol Circle and improvements along that corridor as well. We also had to take a look at the proposed existing capacity of the road and the projected traffic. So as part of that process, we wanted to make sure that we were understanding of where the potential were for improvements and making sure that we were addressing those issues in the corridor study as well. So one of the other things was addressing future growth in the corridor, and this major projects in land availability to the southeast part of the corridor and of Leon County and City of Tallahassee. The component that you see highlighted in white there is up for the Development Review Committee in terms of creating a charter school. So we're starting to see the developments inside of Capitol Circle now, beyond the Southwood. It is a Southwood property, but moving towards the Woodville Highway corridor. And again, in speaking with the representatives from Southwood, they also said that they're going to be pursuing workforce housing within these two parcels of property in the near future. What that means, I don't know in terms of time, but those are the next areas that they're looking at in terms of producing or providing housing. So when we get into we're still in the master plan and we're looking at some of the options in terms of moving forward, and specifically with the Gale Avenue to Paul Russell Road area. There were a couple high-level kind of ideas in terms of making these exchanges. One was what you see up here is a rotary component with two roundabouts on the north and south end of the corridor. There was a flyover component that included one of the roads flying over the other. In this graphic, we're looking at Woodville Highway flying over Crawfordville Road. Some of the issues related to this particular component or this particular concept is that what we're not seeing is the impacts to the neighborhoods, and what we're not seeing is the exchange and expense of creating this flyover. And if I recall correctly, this was one of the first things that the board, the CRTPA board, said, we don't even want to do this. And that was before we even got to the PD&E study. So we had to kind of hold back on what was going on until we got to the PD&E study to make this not happen. And then the third option was taking a look at a loop system. Again, in terms of a high concept, the idea was take a look at the options that are available within this loop in terms of signalization and so forth. So those were the three concepts that came out of the corridor study to move into the PD&E study. And the timeline up on the screen is shown from both of those processes beginning in 2010 and ending in 2013. Moving into the design phase, we had a couple meetings associated with that. We had one in December of 2015 and one in October of 2016. And the timeline shown here, where the process began in October of 2013, which is about 4 months after the PD&E was finished. We moved into design, and that finished in 2016. So from now we're into the design process. We're taking a look at the loop options and what's out there and what we can do and how we can accommodate that with traffic and operations. Within this, there were several different configurations of the road considered. Keeping it two-way, putting signals at all 4 locations, doing this loop as well, which has 2 signalized intersections. The 4 intersection component did not work with the future traffic and existing traffic. It failed.
What didn't work?
If you signalized all 4 intersections, it would fail because of the traffic that was out there. Again, Gale Avenue is a small component of the road system, but it creates a big issue when you're trying to have traffic move in the same direction or different directions against each other. So there's quite a delay at the intersection.
Please, ma'am. Please.
There's quite a delay at the intersection, which causes it to fail, which means everything backs up, and that part of that won't work in terms of what we looked at operationally. In terms of right-of-way, that phase has started for both segments from Capitol Circle to Gale Avenue, from Gale Avenue to Paul Russell Road. in the amounts of about $5 million and $6 million respectively, and those are underway with notices being sent out. And this was as of, the information that was provided to me was as of June, not of September. So it's been 3 months, and they probably made some progress on that, but maybe not in total acquiring any of the right-of-way. So we are in right-of-way. Right-of-way timeline does show completion in 2020 for both segments of the road. For construction, we're looking at an estimated $18 to $19 million for Capitol Circle southeast to Gale, and from Gale to Paul Russell Road, about $8.5 million. And that's current dollars. We expect that to be somewhat higher as it moves in, and we're looking at future dollars being applied to this. So we're still looking, again, in the TIP, we're still looking at 2024, which is the 5th year. The new work program would go to 2025, and if it's even funded in there, again, you're looking, quite a few years, and then 2 or 3 years for construction. So we're probably somewhere in the 2027, 2028 time period, if there's funding that's applied to the project by DOT in the next work program.
I have a question. Going back to that slide where you had the 2 roundabouts, why didn't that work?
It took quite a bit of right-of-way.
More so than what you're getting right now?
Yeah, and it didn't function quite the same way as the loop did. You still have those opposing traffic movements coming in from both of the rotaries leading into it. So from the perspective trying to, within the loop, you've got you're not having a lot of friction when the traffic's heading one way. You're not having the side friction of traffic coming at you and turning in front of you. So you're really reducing the amount of friction, and the operations of the loop work much better when it's not opposing traffic.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Jack, I think you did a really good job showing the 3 different options and how we've arrived at this point. But with regard to the loop, in addition to that, you also went through quite a bit of public input opportunities. So you gave a good history of that. At what point was the loop decided upon and started to be presented to the public?
I can go back and show you. The loop was an option that came out of came out of the corridor master plan, which was approved in May of 2011.
Okay.
So again, you have these 3 high-level concepts that you're looking at. The PD&E takes those, refines those, looks to see which one works best, and then we get down to the loop option, and that's where it was presented and decided. So it's been 2011.
Okay.
Commissioner?
All right, thank you.
Real briefly.
Mr. Chair, thank you. This is just a quick technical question, and I know we have speakers. You keep referring to this as the corridor, and we were designing it together. So if we were to stop at this point, when we're already in right-of-way acquisition, we are in danger of losing funding for more than just this intersection. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think that was just a piggyback on Commissioner Minor's question. So
And I think the DOT made that pretty clear in the last meeting.
And
I believe
just,
so. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, it's not just a matter of losing the money, and it couldn't go to another project, and it's a right-of-way phase funding, so we don't have another project that we have right-of-way phase prepared for. So that money would go somewhere else. And it wouldn't go necessarily even within the district. It would go to see where the right-of-way is needed across the state.
Okay, we've got a lot of citizens. I'm going to give everybody 3 minutes to speak.
Mr. Joe, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Point. Would the longer loop that is basically named the People's Choice at this point, would that be considered a significant change to the project by DOT standards?
Since no one here is from DOT, I'm going to have to say, in my opinion, yes. You've got quite a significant change. And if I'm looking at this correctly, these intersections would be signalized, which is the same as one of the options that was looked at as part of the corridor study moving into the PD&E study.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, everybody's going to have 3 minutes. Our nice attorney over here, Mr. Thornton Williams, is going to have a timer. When the timer goes off, please stop and let the next person come up and talk. And I'm not going to let anybody give their time to somebody else either. Our first speaker is Patricia Zimmer.
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, ma'am, could you give your name and address for the record?
Sure, I can do that. You want me to do it now?
It's on our card.
Yeah, but we
still need to do
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My name's Patricia Zimmer. I live at 71 Field Loop in Crawfordville, Florida. I've been a resident of this wonderful state for over 60 years. I've been a resident in Leon in Wakulla County for the past 50 years. I've traveled these roads several times. It's not broke. I don't know why we think we got to fix it. It will impact a lot of people. I'm real concerned, mostly before Rickards High School, the fairgrounds. Let's see what else would be impacted. Where you buy your license and tags. A lot of people use this road to commute. Y'all have another plan there that they neglected to announce, but I'm sure y'all see it in front of you. And y'all aware of how most of us feel, despite this night 2010 or 2011 when they claimed they come out, they never announced it to the people. It was not put on any ballot to say, hey, what do you think? So there's several thousand people in Wakulla County and Leon County that are not aware of this, have no clue. It's not because, I guess, you don't advertise it. I don't know if you advertise it like you did when you took votes so you could get elected to be here. But I think if you were doing it in that manner, more people would have known about it. I really feel like this needs to be re-looked at. You do not realize the impact of the amount of people that drive from southern Leon County, travel Woodville Highway, and they also travel the Crawfordville Highway coming into the city. This is quite an impact. I know it's going to help Southwood. I realize your plan is to help Southwood. I think that's wonderful. But we have a great truck route going around that needs to be completed in 4-lane from, Crawfordville Highway all the way to Pensacola Street. I don't know why we don't work on that. That's an awesome plan. They've been talking about it for 50 years. Since I've lived here, Capitol Circle was supposed to be completed. It has not been completed yet. So, there's lots of other options. And I wish we could reconsider. Miss Sue has come up with an option there. And it really looks good. There's traffic lights already at all 4 of those points that y'all are talking about. Paul Russell Road, there's a traffic light at Gale Avenue, there's a traffic light at Woodville Highway. All those have traffic lights. There's a traffic light on Crawfordville Highway. There's a traffic light on South Adams. I don't know why we have to add more traffic lights. We don't even have to do anything except widen the roads. I wish y'all would reconsider. It's a nice plan, but loops and turnarounds and twists and one-ways can be very confusing. Maybe it's because of my age, but I guarantee you one day y'all be this old. And it can be confusing for other people. And there's a lot of people in this county. There's a lot of people in Wakulla County. And y'all know this. That's
Thank you,
what's
ma'am.
so exciting. Y'all
Thank
know
you.
this.
Thank you.
I'm not telling y'all anything new.
Cheryl Collier Brown, I hope I didn't mess that up.
No, you did. Good afternoon, Cheryl Collier Brown, 217 West Brevard Street. First of all, for my address, you will determine that I do not live in that area, but I worked in that area for over 30 years, and I still travel that area, volunteering at Rickards and Fairview. Now, as my predecessor just spoke out, it's confusing. Your rendition looks like an interstate to me. And I'm trying to figure out why is it so detrimental that you have to do it this conception to make traffic flow move smoothly. I agree that intersection of Tram, Gale Avenue right in there is nerve-wracking because it's nerve-wracking to me. But I don't understand why all of this has to be done to alleviate the traffic right in that little lull right in there. I think that you should maybe consider looking at, her rendition, or getting more input from the citizens that not only live in that area, that travels that area constantly, because I travel that area every day, just about. So if I hadn't been watching the news or anything, I wouldn't have known anything about it. And one of my big components and one of my big frustrations with certain areas in government is that sometimes we don't get notification as well as we should. And some of my good friends sitting up there know that's been one of my things, and it's getting better because we have elected officials who are listening to us. But the notification, so from 2011 to on, you should have citizen input. When you even think about doing something that's going to impact the community, which majority of you all don't even live in, you should also have impact from residents, how it's going to affect us. And that's my problem. So I wish you would consider even looking at the people's choice. Give that some consideration and some compassion as well. Because we live over there. When you all leave this table here, you might not even look over in that direction ever again, except for maybe every now and then. So you need to consider all of us who's this going to impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Olson, no applause from the audience, please. Liz Olson. Is Liz with us? Okay. All right, let's go to Geraldo Jackson. Did I get that right? Gerald Jackson, I'm sorry. Looked like an O, but it's a D, I guess.
I have to apologize for my handwriting.
No problem.
Good afternoon. I appreciate you allowing me to speak this afternoon. My name is Gerald Jackson. I live at 4424 Anastasia Court. I've lived there for about 11 years. I've been in the city of Tallahassee for over 40 years. I think you're making a big mistake to have that confusing one way on North and one way on South Adams, North Monroe and South Adams. It's going to disturb businesses. It's going to disturb people being able to just do their normal travel. Because when you go up North Monroe going south, you won't be able to stop and make a turn on Gale. You've got to go all the way up to Capitol Circle and then go all the way over and come down Crawfordville in order to go right into where I live. That is extremely disruptive and unnecessary. I, too, and I didn't know anything about this until recently. I don't know where you got the word out because it didn't come to the residents of that area. I don't think that it's prudent to have our neighborhoods disrupted in order to accommodate Southwood. Southwood was formed with the intention of being a community within a community, walking from work to their homes. That didn't work out, so why should we suffer? And I really don't see the traffic. Now, when I worked over at Department of Health out there on Capitol Circle, nobody made a right onto Tram Road. That's not a busy road. Now, I just don't see where the need is, and you haven't demonstrated it to me yet. And so all I'm trying to find out is what is the urgency and how can you justify making that confusion, because that's pure confusion for one block. The amount of confusion you're going to create for that one block of change that you're going to make. So you need to really reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just a point, I'm the chairman today, but I'm actually from Wakulla County. Just in case anybody wants to get mad. Catherine Draken? Catherine? Is there Catherine? Bueller? Over there. Okay.
Hello, my name's Catherine Draken.
Could you give your address, please?
1611 Pepper Drive.
Thank you.
I don't really have much to say. I just want to reiterate the points that have been made. It sounds like the people who live in this area have not been consulted. This project just came out of nowhere, seemingly, to a lot of people. To me, it seems disruptive, confusing, inefficient, and unnecessary, and I highly urge y'all not to go through with this project. That's it.
Thank you. Denzel, something that's French. Yeah. I knew it was French.
Hi, my address is 395 Prince Street. Just wanted to also reiterate that I don't think this is the right idea. It's unfortunate that a project that's been worked on for years and years isn't going to get the money or access it needs, but at the same time, I feel like the community a lot of people from the community don't feel like they really understand the situation. It's really great that y'all got citizen output in 2010, but it's 2019 right now, and I think the times and situations have changed. Before we implement a plan like this, which is honestly just confusing, I've seen the FDO CRTPA plan like 20 times, and I can still barely understand the layout. Before we get a plan like this down, I think we need to reach out and talk more with the community, see how people feel about this, not make a major change that changes a lot of people's access and routes, the way they commute to people. That will change the way a lot of people who go to the school that's near this area, the way they commute and get there. I understand that this process might help with some transportation issues in Tallahassee, but we're making really, really big structural changes that in the end might be dangerous to the community and also might have negative impacts on the businesses right there. When you go through that turnabout, you're missing everything after there. All of those places that used to be seen, that used to have access and kind of like transportation to are now being excluded and blocked. I think you should really take time to listen to the community, not think about the exact funding of things that are happening, and really sit down with this issue again and see if it's the right thing. Because when I see your timeline, to be honest, and I see it stop at 2015, I kind of see that there hasn't been, especially in the past few recent years, a lot of work on this. If people are seeing this just by the news and not by the CRTPA board, then we're not having the citizen access that we really need. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
Hello. My name is John Palmer. I live at 434 West Jefferson Street, and I want to reiterate the comments brought by the other speakers here today. I don't think that the plan brought forth by the CRTPA and FDOT is something that can actually benefit the working class people who are going to be living in this area that are going to be impacted. There is a big difference between talking to property owners and talking to the residents that are going to be impacted by this plan. And I get the impression that most of the citizen input that's been received has mostly been by property owners and not by like the 92 residents, the 92 housing units that are actually going to be impacted. I sincerely urge the commission to consider the people's choice brought forth by Sue Ellen Gardner. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Carla Richardson?
Good afternoon. My name is Carla King Richardson, and my address is 212 West Osceola Street. My family has lived at this address over 60 years, and I just wanted to let you know that I do support the People's Choice design, which will be presented today. And we do appreciate the committee's support and selection of this choice design because we feel that it's a better option. Thank you.
Thank you. Danny Freeman? Bill, you're next.
Jenny Freeman.
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. He told me what the name was.
I can't write. Hi, I'm Jenny Freeman. I live at 981 Crawfordville Trace, the Crawfordville Trace neighborhood. I'm on the board of the Homeowners Association there. Our neighborhood is less than 15 years old. We live in the city surrounded by the county with our access road is a state road, Highway 61, which is Crawfordville
highway. Don't change it. Don't make us go round and round and round in one way and this way and that way. Don't mess up our neighborhood. There are 92 families that live in my neighborhood who will be impacted. Take some time, look at it. Let's save some money. Let's make it, if we have to, let's extend the lanes. Let's get more turn lanes. But don't take old 4 Points, which used to have a drive-in movie theater out there, and it's changed over the years to what it is today. Don't impact my neighborhood.
Thank you. All right, Bill.
Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Give me an address, Bill, please.
301 South Monroe Street, 32301, zip code, Tallahassee, Florida. Commissioners, I ask that you take a serious look at the people's choice. Today it's before you. You have it. It's a better rendering. It's clean. It does not conflict. It does not allow people to go in circles or super roundabout. It's interesting the state is willing to block off with their proposal access to where people pay the state money. If the state is willing to cut its own business and cut the neck of tax collector Doris Malloy, they're not very bright business persons. It causes confusion to go buy your tag, get your driver's license, to pay your speeding tickets, to pay for Leon County property taxes, all of that. It shouldn't be frustrated. That should be convenient. Secondly, Commissioners, in today's, you did not even have printed in my book, which is your book, item 7B was not printed. When I got a copy of it, pages 7, 8, 9, and 10 are missing. I don't know if you have the paper version. I don't know what's missing, but it's not here for the public. Might I suggest that Commissioner Richardson was absolutely right. The 4-laning of Orange Avenue should be made a priority in the areas he's talking. You have FAMU High School there. You got NIM School right up another between 2 red lights. At each red light there, you have a church, Bethel AME. It's a Sunday, a traffic situation. You got Tabernacle. So it's a priority because of the traffic of 2 major churches, 2 schools, and please consider that. Might I also say that this whole meeting concept, when it kicked off in the public, was 2010, and all of these several pages that are used to justify who they met with and all of that, you got about 5 pages of all of that. It's old. I have met with the public. I've held 2 public hearings, both, what that church name, y'all? That church was that? New Hope International, and we did one at the Woodville Community Center last week. Not a person, not a single person supports what has been brought before you. I ask that you all side on the people's side. You talked about lights today from Tillman Funeral Home down to Publix on Crawfordville Road. We need some lights there as well. I ask your consideration for some lights there. But for God's sake, please listen to the people's voice in this matter. Sue Ellen Gardner done a fantastic job. It's not complicated. It's going to save money. And you're going to hopefully keep our... What we want you to do today is to adopt the people's proposal, to not let the thing that's presented in front of you by your engineers to move forward. It's a disaster. You don't have to create this disaster on us. And we recognize that we're the, quote, the less affluent side. We recognize that we're not the uppity ups and all like that. But for God's sake, we ask you all just to look at this thing and look at what we have now. Access north and south on 2 streets. Tallahassee is filled with roads that have parallel north and south or east and west pairings. That's what Adams Street represents up and down. That's what Monroe Street has represented for years. And why we have to have right here at this place that we're creating to botch up traffic, don't do that to us. We're asking y'all, don't do that to us. And we're asking you to take these 10-year-old meetings and get Dr. Adrian Wright and let Dr. Wright do a real public engagement. We shouldn't have no public engagement a decade old, and then they pretend to you all that this right here is what we've done. You let me call this meeting. I'll bring you 300 people down any place you want to meet, anytime. You tell me what day you want it, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I'll get you 300 people that live there, and they will tell you what they want. Please hear the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Vern Thomas? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay.
Satya Starch Penjar. I'm sorry, I'm the one
I
butchering.
gave that one off to Greg.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Satya Stark Bainar. I live at 1332 Nancy Drive, Tallahassee, Florida. I definitely unite with just about all that has been said about the badness of the proposed CRTPA plan. And I definitely encourage y'all to look at the People's Choice Plan, which was come up with by people who live and work in that directly impacted area. As a person who travels these routes nearly every day for caregiving work that I supply to people in the South Side who have either cognitive or physical impairments, accessibility is always high on my priority list and ever present on my radar. And this plan, this best out of three plans that you've presented to us, does not appear to enhance accessibility. And as far as studies go, I would encourage y'all to take some nighttime walks in the South Side, and wherever you can't see, put streetlights there. So there's one study format option for you. Please, just listen to people more and more often, and at times of day when people can actually get here. The only reason I'm here today is because I'm severely underemployed. I know at least a dozen other people who would have been here, but they already used up all their vacation time going to government meetings during the day. So as much as you can set your public outreach at times and places when working class people can actually attend, that would be most appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Sophie? Harry Long. Thank you, ma'am, for saving me on that.
I'm just going to be brief, quickly. Sophia Terrelong. I live at 2069 Continental Avenue. I do not live in the area, but I travel the routes. And I'm just appalled that I recently learned about this project. And so I attended an emergency meeting they had with the community. And I just feel that using an old plan, almost 10 years, with current times is just wrong. While I attend that meeting, many of the citizens were unaware, and that was very sad. And I wish they all could be here to represent and voice, but they were very upset because it seemed as though it was done in secret. Now, I know that gentleman mentioned that there were 6 meetings, and he spoke to representative in the neighborhood, but there were representatives from the churches, and there were members from churches and businesses at our meeting, and no one knew about the meeting. So I thank Sue Ellen, who made us aware, and so I thank you for your time. That's all.
Thank you. Sue Ellen, you're the last speaker, and you've asked for a little. If you run over a little bit, you'll be okay. I know you got a presentation.
Hi, I'm Sue Ellen. As Greg likes to say, trouble. Thank you for hearing me today. I live at 4606 Tall Oak Drive in Tallahassee, Florida. A couple of things. I'm just going to go down my list here. How is it that you created a vision that is so-called consistent with the Master Comprehensive Plan with absolutely no regard for the surrounding community? Okay? This super roundabout is the wrong solution for the existing problem, which is congestion on Gale Avenue, and accommodates for congestion on Gale Avenue and accommodations for projected future growth. Out of the 400 people that initially signed my petition initially opposing this segment of the project, no one knew of its existence or planned outcome. Many of them homeowners. Out of the 50 people that attended my community meetings, no one knew of the project. Many of them have roots in this community spanning generations. I submit to you, your so-called community engagement was not a representative sample of the actual community this will be affecting. Further, for a $34 million budget, each project that is $34 million, each segment of the project should have been addressed and presented separately. Evident from the type of feedback received in the notations in what Jack went over, sand, this is some of the comments, sand speeding across the trail after it rains. Campbell Pond can be assessed through this area. This area is prone to flooding. Those comments further illustrate that initially in 2010, when you presented it to the people, you presented, and even the plan says it, you presented it from South Monroe Street right after you crossed Capitol Circle to Gale Avenue. That was the segment presented. These people were in their design charrette, they were attending meetings, and that was the segment, that was the focal point of the segment, and they commented on that segment and that area. And let me follow my notes here. I'm going to go for further, based upon the comments of your limited sample, the solution you came up with is not what the people involved asked for or wanted. Engagement in 2010, which I'm just gonna, was based on Woodville Highway, which I just said that. Okay, in 2011, there was a consensus out of the options presented that the roundabout would cause a traffic congestion. The public comments were from less than 20 people, by the way, in 2011. Most did not even live in the immediate area because their addresses were on the attachment. Okay, so moving on. On page 12 of the attachment A, and I'm not sure if you all got that attachment, but page 12, which is their growth chart, it illustrates and serves as an explicative example of why I would love it if page 12 is actually in Jack's presentation. It is the existing and projected traffic in his presentation. If you could pull that up, Yolanda, that would be great. Example of why the one-way solution for the surrounding neighborhood is bad. Okay. Per FDOT's projections, by 2035, about 30,000 daily average vehicles will travel on South Monroe, and about 30,000 will travel on South Adams. That's 60,000 vehicles now that people that live in that community are going to have to contend with on the one-way road every day, every time we leave the house, on every trip. That's not fair, and that's not right. According to your travel projections, again, this is the one on page 12 on the attachment A, trams Tram's traffic flow will increase to 15,000 vehicles. With the People's Plan, with the People's Choice Plan, Tram Road will include a left turning lane and a right turning lane at the intersection of Monroe, giving the street 3 lanes and raising the projected loss of service. To a higher mark, which would put the street, which would put the street at an average LOS per Tallahassee streets. Our goal today is not to stop progress or obstruction or obstruct change. Our goal is to help facilitate a change that accommodates the surrounding neighborhoods, travelers from Woodville and travelers from Crawfordville, and future growth projections. The research is complete, right? So the research is done that when you go back and refer to the projected growth models given to us, last week, a week last week, inside of Jack's presentation, that one that he presented today, the research is done, and it shows, like I said, explicatively, like that the one way will not alleviate traffic. It will cause traffic congestions. And especially the people who will feel it the most are those that live in the surrounding neighborhoods. Yes, it's easy for you all, or for those that may or may not travel, those that are in the southeast community or area of Tallahassee, to say, oh, well, this is great. I think that this may work, because you won't have to contend in this madness every day, every time you leave the house. And so, back on point, today we are asking that the funds designated for this project, that you take this project and the funds designated for it, and you look at the People's Choice, and whatever tweak that needs to be made, make those minor adjustments. Whatever way that you could add more beautification attributes, do that. But this works. This works. How do I know it works? Because the data, according to what was presented today, says it does. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner just reminded me, I want to let you know that I created the People's Choice model from your diagram, from the original diagram. Therefore, there is no extra expenditure. Actually, there's less, because there's less road that you have to do construction on. And everything is within those guidelines initially created by FDOT.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, without everybody telling us how they feel or think, does anybody want to make a motion? Because does anybody want to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, there isn't necessarily any action that was supposed to be taken today, but what I am wondering is, one thing that was made obvious during the last meeting we had was that a significant change in the project would indicate a redesign, which would cost us the money that we're talking about. I want to know specifically, for the People's Choice option, would that be deemed to be a significant redesign from FDOT themselves? I understand what we hear from our staff, but I would like to know what FDOT would say about that.
Bryant's not here today. There's nobody here from Are you DOT? Come on up here, hot seat.
So even if we don't get an official answer, I don't think there's anything that prevents us from having a letter come from the chair or from staff, sending this proposal to them and asking them the question of, is this a significant change to the design? The other thing I was wondering is what's the timeline in which we have to make these decisions before we're at a point of no return. I know where we are right now, and we quite feasibly may be able to be there, but given the fact that her design works within the framework of what was originally designed for us in the option that's deemed to be the CRTPA FDOT option, I think that could give us a little more flexibility in what we're trying to do here. So, very, very interested in seeing what that means, because I don't think anybody here nor the people of the South Side want to give back that money. I just think they would like to see if there's other options that could be entertained.
Can you answer either one of those questions? No pressure.
There were a few. My name's Jessica Galima. I'm the design project manager. Shorter than the microphone. I'm the design project manager, and I'm working with DOT through Atkins as their general engineering consultant. And you had several questions?
First question is the design that's the people's choice that we saw before.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, okay. Would that be deemed to be a significant change to the design, making it a less viable option to continue to be funded?
It would be a complete redesign back to the study phase, because we have to go and run the traffic through this design, which is something we could probably do. Run the traffic through it, because if it doesn't meet a certain level of service, that alone would take out the funding.
Okay, what was the next question, Nick?
Well, that was the crux of the matter of it all, actually.
And regarding the funding, because
yeah. The question was about the funding. I mean, because one thing we heard last time is a redesign would cost us the funding. So do you read it that way as well?
Most likely, yes. There's no construction funding right now. The right-of-way is funded. This segment is currently in right-of-way this year. So the funds that have already been expended there are gone. The federal funds are not tied to this project specifically. The state funds, there's a little more potential for, but you would lose a portion of it, yes.
Kristen? Good.
Thank you. Good questions. And Jessica, it's not always easy to get up right, from the audience there. So thank you very much.
You have a question for her?
That was very helpful. I think Greg and Jack can answer it, but if you had any comments on it, and the chairman wanted you to stick around, that'd be fine.
I was going to let her sit down if you didn't have a question.
We're good. Thank you, Jessica. Yes.
Ma'am.
Come on.
You can ask her in the back of the room if you want to.
So,
go ahead.
To that point that Jessica just made, and again, thank you very much, that saying that contemplating this design from a planner's, from an engineering perspective, yes, Greg, we could step back and look at an alternative like what's presented before us today, but as she just said, that would go back to the planning stage. We would lose what funding has already been dedicated to this by FDOT, and we've seen the impact of these types of changes in past years. It is unlikely that they would come back to fund right-of-way acquisition and construction for many, many, many more years. Is that correct?
I mean, we're going back to what we talked about earlier. If we were to lose the right-of-way funding and let's say go back through a redesign, that money goes to another right-of-way phase, to another project.
Off the highway.
As it stands.
Not necessarily. It could be anywhere.
That's what I'd push for.
It could be, yeah. But no, any additional right-of-way, we'd be kind of back in that same boat. We'd be looking for right-of-way in the fifth year, which is 2024, 2025. And then again, you're looking at construction at some point after that. So if you were to want to go back and do a redesign, any physical improvement to Woodville Highway, we're probably looking well after 2030 for that.
Okay. So my memory of this conversation between 11 and 15 was that none of us were happy with any of the alternatives presented, that FDOT was going to look at this corridor for multiple reasons. It wasn't just about Southwood, but it was increased residential in Woodville, Crawfordville, other areas. And I asked you this in briefing, but just for the record, work was done way back when, maybe when I was in high school or something, on the old 4 points, 5 points down there, which was a really horrible intersection. My question in briefing was that did that change that existed well before we got into this study, even in 2010, 2011, kind of lock us in to a certain set of options that were presented?
I think to a certain extent, and as Jack mentioned in the presentation, the kind of the kink in the whole thing is the Gale Avenue intersection at both roadways. It's only 600 feet long. You've got a confluence of a lot of traffic, coming up north, making a right or making a left, going either, basically crossing over to the other roadway. I'm not familiar with what it looked like before that, but I think the short answer to your question is yes, it had to have a significant
It was pretty
impact.
bad before that.
It was pretty bad. There wasn't the median that we see between the two, yes. So it was a good change, but we are seeing traffic increase and potential increase from both directions, Crawfordville and Woodville Highway. So I've thought a lot about this, and the concerns about the impact to neighborhoods and others and the communication resonates. Most of us around the table were in this room for a very long, very emotional meeting just a couple weeks ago at Blueprint. And we hear some of the same things about public communication on projects that take a really long time to come to fruition. So I kind of want to put a pin in that. We can talk about it later, but I think some of the same conversation we had at Blueprint about looking at how we do this, how we track a long-term project history on the website could be helpful for CRTPA as well. And technology has changed. We got a lot more social media, and quite bluntly, I believe strongly our staff has never been communicating better with the public, but that's been the last 4 or 5 years. So we are getting better. There was a lot of communication based on how our best approach at that time. So this wasn't my favorite, for sure, but given all of the work that had been done at that time, this is where we landed, and that starts a clock, multi-year clock, for getting us to this position where we don't even have much involvement, right? So with all that, my one critical concern right now about the proposed plan and the existing loop, if I look at the Gale Avenue intersection at the citizens' proposal here, I am seeing a crosswalk that crosses, I just folded up my notes, 7 lanes of traffic. We are trying to get away from this in so many other intersections in this community. It is not pedestrian friendly. So addressing pedestrian concerns, this intersection looks like a real challenge to me, to even if we were going to go that direction. Again, I don't want to lose the funding or anything, but if we were going to go this direction, I would assume it wouldn't meet all of FDOT's goals and nor our goals about pedestrian issues. So I'm not a fan of this design nor losing the money. However, and one gentleman spoke to this, I believe specifically, the access to Gale Avenue on the east side has always been a major concern. That's right, that's on the east side of Woodville Highway. I don't know if I have my directions right, but on the fairground side, on the Fairview side of, and Ms. Cheryl was my teacher at Fairview, so yes, we were in that area a long time, yes, and you were there for a very long time, ma'am. Access to that neighborhood has always been an issue, and I heard this gentleman say that he would have to go up to Capitol Circle to do a U-turn and get back to his neighborhood if he was coming down Monroe Street heading south to Crawfordville Highway. I am wondering 2 things. One, is there a light or a curb cut or something else that we could do just past the intersection there if this were to move forward, meaning moving down Woodville Highway, so that people would not have to go all the way to Capitol Circle and do a U-turn, if that's...
Nothing's changing on Monroe Street.
There are medians there that block access.
You're talking about on Woodville Highway?
Yes, coming across Gale. So if you're coming down Monroe and you wanted to get to your house on Gale, on Woodville Highway, that's...
Gotcha.
I believe,
Yeah.
Commissioner,
You're
if
going
I
south.
could point
Am I wrong on
something
that?
out.
Yes.
I don't think, and this is, unfortunately, this is cut off, I don't think you have to go all the way down to Capitol Circle. It looks like there's been an accommodation made to make a U-turn just to the
There's a left turn lane, Chris, can you see it?
of the State Road 363.
It is cut off on this map right in front of me, but I do see the left turn lane. Okay, so that answers the first question. Thank you for that. The second question, and forgive me, Mr. Chair, but I'd love to dispense with this issue and move on, but access to the neighborhood is a concern. And this one area of the neighborhood, and I've been back there on Meals on Wheels and others, I'm sure others have, it is, you do need good access to these neighborhoods. So there is South Meridian Road, I believe, that comes around from Tram. I am wondering if, I don't know if this is city or county, but if we could look at the local roads in that area to improve access to the neighborhood if this option moves forward. And I don't know if you all or have ever talked with city or county staff about those issues.
No, ma'am, that's not one I'm familiar with, but we could definitely look into it.
Okay. I think access to the neighborhood is a critical piece of this puzzle. I don't know how we get out of this box without losing incredible funding and a plan that was difficult to get to this position. None of us liked it.
Nick?
But I think getting to that neighborhood is a key piece. Thank you.
Those were good ideas.
Nick?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I've listened to people speak, and I've actually talked to Commissioner Proctor a few seconds ago, and you know, when we went to, for those of us who went to the CRTPA Institute or the MPOAC Institute, one thing we learned is that there's a lot of times that money's offered with rolls, and citizens could have, or elected officials could have chosen to turn those rolls down. They didn't. They went ahead with them because they thought that was the right thing to do. I can't sit here today, and in my executive committee meeting, I said the same thing. I can't sit here and say that even through my own thoughts that I like the design of the CRTPA, the FDOT choice. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm not a fan. It makes it, even looking at the Gale piece of it, which is what we're trying to address. Right now, people can go from Gale straight across and hit Ridge Road without a problem. With this contemplated route, they would have to go down the trail, make a U-turn, and come back up, which Jack told me takes about 45 seconds. So it's not quite as long as the graphic makes it look, but it's still an inconvenience in itself. This is probably one of the hardest decisions that I've had to make as an elected official, especially sitting here knowing that I may be potentially I am potentially turning money back, but I can't continue to support this. I mean, Mr. Chair, I will make the motion that we petition FDOT to go with the people's choice option here.
Okay. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of second. Thank you.
I figured that was going to happen, but I had to give it a try. At that level, worse. I understand what's happened here, or the statements that have been made here. Can we at least have a letter from the chairman asking FDOT's opinion of significant impact to the project to send it back to redesign?
Absolutely.
And it's not that I don't trust what the young lady said. I'm just trying to take every option I can here, because I'm be honest, I really, and Chris, you said yourself, Commissioner Dozier, I'm so rude. You said yourself in that there was no option that worked for us at any point here.
You want to put that in the form of motion, Nick?
Yes, sir. I'll make a motion that we have a letter come from the chair asking FDOT for their opinion on the people's choice option.
All in favor?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Friendly amendment?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we also ask city and county staff to look at access to the neighborhoods that might be impacted by this change should it move forward? Perfect. And get that into CRTPA?
I think maybe if I'm hearing you right, even if you do end up going with the CRTPA and DOT plan, there may be other little tweaks for neighborhood access that this would be the time to do them. As long as they're not major changes that are going to, torpedo the whole project. But so let's include that in the letter too.
Yeah, that works. I mean, we can do that.
I'll second the friendly amendment.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. The thing here is that.
Let me get the vote, Nick. All in favor?
What are we voting on?
Sending a letter to DOT to do.
Send a letter to DOT to get their opinion on the people's choice option, whether or not it's a significant change.
And what was the amendment?
The amendment was to ask Leon County and city staff to come back with options to mitigate the impact to the neighborhoods, correct?
Any recommended minor tweaks?
To assess, yeah.
To assess.
To see if there's anything else we could do. But you, Mr. Chair, you also suggested adding in access to the neighborhood into the FDOT letter, just
Yeah.
to see if they've
We could tweak
got
it.
any
That's right.
options for that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Again, I mean, I'm not afraid to turn this money back, but I understand the kind of position it puts us in. Who remembers a few years ago when the newspaper and the road construction around here was down our neck because we were turning down projects. FDOT basically said, well, if you're going to turn them down, we're not going to send them to you. So I understand the position that we're in, but at the same time, if none of us really like the options that were given to us, there's got to be a way that we can either mitigate the impact to the neighborhood, as Commissioner Dozier said, or if we can just get the FDOT to look at this thing as not having a significant impact, then that could possibly get us there. I mean, last thing I'll say, Mr. Chair, is one smart thing I think Sue Ellen did was to have the whole design fit within the realm of what we were already thinking anyway, so there's not any extra here or there, maybe even a little less. I thought that was pretty clever on her part, because one thing you would think about was, well, if you make it 4 lanes, or if you do this, you do that, you start spending extra money, then you have to reconsider the thing. So I appreciate the board walking down this path with me, and we'll see what we get back.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Moving on. Greg?
Item 7C, the Monticello Bike Trail Extension Feasibility Study. Mr. Burke was our project manager on this project. He's going to give a brief introduction.
Okay, good afternoon, members. Approximately a year ago, this project was kicked off by Kimley Horn, and what it did was look at the extension to the south of the Monticello Bike Trail project. As some of you have known, this project has been #1 on the CRTPA's Bike Ped project priority list for the last few years. With us today, we have to present the findings is John Sewell with Kimley Horn and Associates.
Good afternoon, board members. Thanks, Greg. My wife says I can clear a room out. I guess she's right. I'm going to present on the Monticello Bike Trail Extension Feasibility Study. As Greg said, we started this off a few months ago. We've worked through a series of alternatives trying to achieve the goal of this project. And I think we have an option that will benefit the community and proposes a very cost-efficient solution to our goal. So basically the project purpose of this, as some of you may know, there is an existing multi-use bike path up in the city of Monticello in Jefferson County. It's a relatively short trail. It's about 2 miles. The good thing about the trail is it actually starts in the downtown. It's a downtown urban trail. So a lot of people currently are walking on the trail and using it for a little bit of transportation and some recreation. The goal of this project is to extend that trail further to the south, down with the goal of reaching to Jefferson County Middle and High School, which is located on the east side of US 19, south of the city of Monticello. So that would, as a crow flies, that would increase it to about 4.7 miles. In addition to that, obviously connecting to the neighborhoods, places of interest in the downtown, and of course the school. And then it's also going to connect into and be a part of a regional trail system, which I'm going to walk you through here in a minute and show you how significant Monticello actually fits into this larger network of trails. It's actually pretty surprising, but actually very exciting too. There are some supporting projects that kind of got us to this point. One of those projects was the Bike Ped Master Plan that was done by the CRTPA for Jefferson County a couple of years ago. In addition to that, the path was identified as a result of that project. This project was identified in the DOT work program as a feasibility study. It also has the potential to connect to a potential trailhead site in the downtown of Monticello, which I'll talk about here in a minute, that is also a part of the US 90 corridor that comes into Monticello from the west. And just looking for ways to connect to the existing facilities that are out there and events. As you all know, or some of you may know, Monticello is actually one of the stopping points for a lot of bicycle events in this region. and it's a very popular destination for cyclists from all over the area. So these are some of the connections that I talked about. The US 90 corridor, which it actually would connect from the western part of the region from the city of Tallahassee. There's a trail connection that connects over to the east by way of 90 as well. And then there's the coastal connector that actually comes up all the way from the Withlacoochee Trail, areas like Citrus County, the Withlacoochee Trail, Marion County, the Cross Florida Greenway, and all of that would connect up by way of Cross City and that Cross City connection. So as you can see, Monticello really does fit into this greater network, and some of these corridors are actually on the DEP projects lists, their Opportunity Corridor and their Sun Trail Network, so they'd be eligible for state funding. So just kind of looking at this corridor, we had some constraints that we had to deal with out there, one of which was there's a bridge on the southern end of this corridor on US 19. We looked at the bridge. We don't think that there's room on that bridge to accommodate a multi-use path. There's private property surrounding the corridors that we looked at, and so we had to work around those properties to try to avoid any need for right-of-way takings. And then we just looked at things like there's some gravel, natural surface roads out there, and we wanted to consider those as well.
John, forgive me.
Yes, sir.
It's been a long meeting.
Yes, sir.
Betsy, do you want the honor of making the motion to approve this?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Oh,
No discussion, right?
go. I'm sorry, is that a new rule, Mr. Chair?
No. It's a suggestion.
I just wanted to compliment the good commissioner from Jefferson County and John, whose presentation you so artfully interrupted there. Thank you.
No problem.
Long meeting.
This has been a long time coming and well done. And looking at how it connects in with our other counties and even into Georgia in the future, perhaps, is very critical. And I'm sitting next to Executive Director from the Planning Council, and this can go for all of our 9 counties, even in our region. We're going to have an incredible trail system interconnected. So this is a real link in that to get us connected with trails south of us. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for your heartfelt comments. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Wait, I do have a question.
Okay, go
Okay,
ahead.
we can take a vote, but I do have a question.
Let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Go ahead.
I had to go potty, I'm sorry.
So when you were looking at the trail, we had talked about on Drifton Road specifically going 19 and then going past Old Drifton Road and then coming in to be able
Sure.
to go down that beautiful corridor.
Yeah, and so the reason why we opted against that was we felt like that would end up being a paved road, in essence. We'd have to pave the road, which is fine, but in essence, that would end up being a shared lane use marking and not a dedicated facility. And so we decided that the best option would be to take it out to 19 and have the corridor go along 19. There's plenty of right-of-way out there. It's a safer alternative, and it actually increases the length of the multi-use trail to a much longer length.
Right. So when you get on, you're on 19 and you get to Old Drifton Road and you turn left onto Old Drifton Road, we know there's a business right there. And
Correct.
the challenge is getting those people getting out of that business.
Yeah, we couldn't close the road.
You couldn't, but you could not find a way to go past Old Drifton Road and then go into where that business is. You couldn't figure that part out.
Not really, no. Again, the 19 alternative was, we felt like it was the better option just because there was so much right-of-way out there. We could actually create the corridor off of the road pretty far. And, you know, there'd be opportunities for some tree plantings and things like that to make it a more enjoyable road or more enjoyable trip and get it off the road. That was really our concern.
So, and on the road, on Horn Road, cars are going to be allowed on there as well as.
For a short section, yes. Yes.
Okay, now tell me where that section is. So you go over the railroad track?
That's actually the alternative right there. So if I could just walk you from north to south.
Okay.
The green is the
I
existing.
just want to make sure I understand
Sure.
what we are doing here, and I have
Yeah.
somebody from Monticello too.
Let's be sure. The green corridor at the top on the north end is the existing trail.
Right.
Where it turns to a blue and green hatching or dashed line, that is the remainder of the abandoned rail line that we have access to. That is
Right, that goes to Nakusa.
correct.
Yeah.
Then we would use Nakusa, which is that short little yellow segment, which would be a shared lane use marking.
Right.
The only people using that road are people that are going in and out of the nursery. So it's
That's a delivery road.
correct.
Also for
It's
the-
a very low volume road that doesn't have a lot of traffic on it at all. It's very minimal.
But what traffic, not minimal, I'm just making sure we understand. There are huge trucks coming in and out of that Nakusa Road.
Correct, but they're very intermittent.
Okay.
And so we felt like that was the best connection over to 19. We would have a multi-use trail on 19. We would have a short section on Acilla Road.
Right.
That would connect over to Home Road.
Yeah.
And again, that Home Road section has very little traffic on it as well. So those 3 yellow sections on that alternative are extremely low volumes, low speed, and they meet all the criteria for a shared lane use marking.
So what are you going to do about the railroad track?
We'd have to have a crossing over that.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do that. I mean, we do that as a part of our designs all the time. It's not an issue.
I was just concerned about that Nakusa Road, and you talked to the Simpsons Nursery and about.
We talked to the nursery, and as a matter of fact, the abandoned rail line actually goes through their property.
Right.
And they were not willing to discuss an option.
I knew they weren't going to do that.
So,
Would have been nice.
But we tried.
Originally.
Right.
They were, but
Right.
they are a good community partner anyway.
Yeah.
May I just ask, Mr. Clark, you got any comments? Good.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Appreciate it.
Just for the record, the last Wakulla County Board of County Commissioners meeting was 12 minutes. One, 2, 12 minutes. We adopted the millage rate that night. Okay, next item.
Mr. Chairman, item 7D is our 2020 CRTPA budget. I think I met with all of you in briefing and kind of discussed it. By and large, the budget's unchanged. We increased about 3.4%. All of that was salary increases for staff members other than myself.
Okay, I'm sure everybody's read this. Is there a motion on it?
To approve.
So moved.
Nice job, Greg.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good job, Greg. FDOT is not here. Greg, your report?
Just a couple of things. Our quarterly budget reports were included as part of your agenda packet. I also wanted to touch quickly on the MCOR's task force meeting. We had hoped to have a summary by today of that meeting, but we did not. It was actually held on August 27th down in Tampa. If you remember, there's 3 committees, but our focus, of course, is the extension of the Suncoast Connector. The task force was told quickly that they would not be involved in drawing lines on a map. That will be done through the consultant that DOT is hiring. My understanding is they have selected Atkins for the Suncoast Connector. I don't know quite the status of the contract itself. They're looking to have routes perhaps the latter part of next year, but that's not set in stone yet.
Who's the guy we met with Jason Schoaf, with Anderson? Who's Anderson Columbia's?
Kevin Wall.
Huh?
Kevin Wall.
Kevin Wall. He was absolutely convinced this was going to happen.
I'm sorry, what did I?
Yeah, he was there.
Nothing.
But I just want
He was absolutely convinced they were going to be built.
Commissioner Dozier, Mr. Barfield, and Mr. Rito are actually CRTPA representative, Jefferson County representative, and ARPC.
I got out of
You
there.
guys wanted to
You missed a
weigh
good
in
meeting.
on
No,
what
I
you
didn't.
saw. The next meeting, I believe, is in November.
Late October.
Published late October.
I passed it off to Chris. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
And again, I don't know if you want to make a comment about what you observed, but
So anybody know where the route's going to be?
No.
I mean, that's what we were just talking about. They have, DOT has selected a consultant for the Suncoast. I don't believe they're under contract yet. but
Atkins?
It's Atkins. My understanding is what they're thinking now is we'll probably see, I like to say, lines on a map, probably sometime the latter half of next year, but that's not a guarantee at this point.
So they're selecting engineers for all 3 sections.
Yes, and I believe they were selecting 3 different teams for the 3 corridors.
Okay.
I don't know who got
That
the
makes
other
sense.
2. But they'll be doing, I believe, if I remember correctly, the initial planning, the PD&E studies, as well as design. I have asked Wei Wei Shen, who's the, I just blanked on her title, she got promoted. Planning Chief, thank you, for a presentation to you all in November. Hopefully by then there'll be some level of detail that we all can have some good conversations about.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Yes,
Yeah,
You don't need to preach.
thank you. Yeah, there's some, of course, concern for and against in Jefferson County. And what we're going to do is we're going to gather up and take public comment. Of course, we have a public comment meeting, but it's the unified voice is going to go through the Board of County Commissioners with the city of Monticello in, and then march that forward is how we're looking at it. Thank you.
I was simply going to say that I think we are there by virtue of being Jefferson's neighbors, and so paying attention a lot, but obviously Jefferson County, I'm going to be really interested to hear what people in the county think about this, because it is more of a direct impact than any of our other counties.
It'd be major.
It would be, and there were some people from Madison County there lobbying for a shift, so that is interesting as well. For my part, I simply wanted to say here that I tried to look at this as if this is exactly opposite of how we've been trained to do by all of you good people, to do transportation planning. So within the study for the north section, if we could get data that helps us improve 19 in the future, that helps us look at different aspects of this, whether the road is built or not, and I do not agree with Mr. Anderson, I did talk to him there, that it's a done deal for the north portion. But I think we could get some improvements, and the study could provide some data if we really focus on data that could be applied to either a new road or 19. So is that correct, Greg? That kind
Yes,
of
ma'am.
right
That was one of the things that I did find interesting. You know, initially when we heard about this, I think everybody kind of assumed this would be a brand-new corridor, but there was some discussion at the meeting that in some instances they may use existing facilities, and I believe 19 was specifically mentioned. So I think we'll just have to watch it as it plays out. You know, we're developing our regional mobility plan over the next year, so that's going to play into this as well.
Very good.
But it's going to behoove us to stay involved in it, to understand exactly what's going in and where it's going.
Yep, absolutely. Okay.
That's it? The TIP reports, everybody's read those, so I don't think you need to go over those. All right. Future meetings, is that just information?
Yes, sir. Our next item up, or is there a retreat agenda at Air Point again? This
Same
year?
place on South Monroe, right?
Yes, sir. We tried doing it in a different place, but we lost our other spot at the
Lunch is served, I guess, because it's there till 1.
Carl coming? When's Carl coming?
For that one, I don't believe Carl is.
Okay.
Would you like me to have him come?
Just make sure he comes at some point. I want the board to be aware of the MPOAC.
Sure.
Regarding.
I can talk to him.
Thank you, sir.
Chris, what was the road we met with Schoaf and the other guy about, talking about 4-lane, and this is not in CRTPA, but it's just outside of it, 71?
71.
Coming out of St. Joe. Anyway, we met with, trying
Yeah,
to get some
resurfacing.
funding to fund to 4-lane that road, which would be a big impact just to our west.
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. Remind me of something else. You know, a couple of months ago, Chris approached us about an issue of looking at an interchange in Gadsden County on Highway
65.
One of the things we found out in discussions with DOT, it does not meet the minimum federal spacing requirements. But one of the things we did offer up at the RPC meeting as part of the development of the long-range plan would be look at a parallel road from 65 to...
This would be for hurricane evacuation.
State Road 12,
But-
where the existing interchange is.
Right, yeah. The base issue we had was the fact that it did not meet the federal scoring or spacing criteria, so we would not be able
Again, that was for hurricane evacuation we were looking at.
And our board was very appreciative of that report out.
Everybody done?
One last thing. For the record, Mr. Executive Director, will you state, I know we had this conversation during the executive committee meeting, but talk a little bit about why we cannot, what are the limitations on us intervening or helping out with the Gaston County Bridge project and failure?
Actually, I made some calls to DOT Central Office, and we think we may have found a potential funding source for
Great.
that. So we actually had a couple of conversations earlier today.
Great.
The next couple of days.
To bring the board up to speed, and you'll be very proud of our executive director here because technically this is a local bridge that fell down. But Gaston County gave a call to us through my suggestion. I actually gave a call to Greg to see what we could do here at the CRTPA. He made some calls and looks like he said, he's found some funding
Maybe
maybe
on the
found
maybe.
some funding, but just the fact that he was able to make that call for them, knowing that it's not necessarily our responsibility, but we are the transportation board or board for our connection for FDOT for our region. I appreciate you doing that. I'm sure the commissioners in Gaston County appreciate it as well.
You said it fell down?
Yeah,
Yes.
that bridge collapsed.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Nobody got hurt, right?
No,
Well,
sir.
actually, they had
Wooden bridge?
two cars that was, I think it was a culvert with asphalt overlay.
Yeah, did they get hurt?
Two cars.
So it was a
went
box
flying.
culvert, basically?
Yeah, box culvert collapsed. Did they get hurt?
I want to make a
There were
comment.
some injuries on that. I don't know how severe, but within about 30 minutes, they had two cars. I guess it collapsed in the dark.
It's not really a bridge, it's a box culvert.
It's a box
Yeah.
culvert, yes.
Quickly.
So in the rural counties, that is a huge problem.
Yes.
Because if it's on a local road, then the locals are expected to repair those bridges. For example, we have a bridge that we share with Taylor County, and our repair, if DOT does it, is $250,000. Well, we've negotiated them down to a $70,000 price tag. Still, that's a huge chunk of change for us. I think that what we need to do is we need to work with DOT and have some maintenance money come through for our counties to be able to maintenance those bridges. Because if you look at your bridge reports, they're years and years apart, and particularly on Asheville Highway, that bridge, the tonnage is being lowered significantly, and that's a huge agricultural area right there. So there's no way that those tractors and big trucks and deliveries can come through that bridge, and there is only a 30-mile workaround. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I would love for us to take a look at that and see if maybe we could work through that.
Most small counties like us, for assume, just don't do the maintenance. I mean, there's all kind of things you're supposed to be doing with the control joints.
Oh, and they tell you to close it down, and then you've got to fix it.
Now, they will replace the bridge, but they won't come fix it for you. We've been through that many times.
And part of the problem is the pot of money, let's say, that they can pull for local bridge maintenance is extremely small, and you just touched on it. You can replace one, I don't want to say quicker and easier, but it's usually easier.
But if a piling falls out, you got to
Right,
put it back in.
yeah, on
The county has
maintenance
to do
part.
that. Yes. So I think it's an issue that we need to look at and address. If there's anything that we can do for, DOT can pull out their drawer and hand you $100,000, it seems.
I don't think those days are quite as frequent as they used to be.
But no, in all seriousness, I think that's something that we do need to address, because I'm sure Leon County's got that same issue too, but you have certainly.
They got plenty of money. All right,
We
last
have
one.
Plenty
Kristen.
is there,
Yeah.
but we have more money than our surrounding neighboring counties, to be sure.
She's saying she'll pay for it.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to say that this seems like an issue that our MPOAC rep and current president of Florida Association of Counties may want to put on the agenda or in discussion, because we know that if we focus on maintenance dollars, we are going to save money in the long run, and may not need the replacement as much, and we can certainly save lives or prevent injuries. So the maintenance dollars that...
A lot of the failures are due to the piling, wooden pilings get eroded, and then there's nothing underneath. We've had them where they're just sitting there on the bottom, and there's no real maintenance issue you can do with
Mr.
that.
Chair, I understand. There are some bridges, we went through this around Natural Bridge, there are some bridges that have to be
Right.
replaced. There are others that maintenance dollars may help in the early years. So I just believe this is a common issue, particularly to medium and small-sized counties, and MPOAC and FACT may be interested.
I think that's an excellent idea. If we're at the end of our meeting, but we're prolonging it, I'll make a motion that we have the chair send a letter to the MPOAC chair to have this brought up as a issue. Pretty sure there are other counties in the state that have a issue with it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Anybody else? All right, we're adjourned.
Okay, sorry. I volunteered to serve on the executive committee, but Greg locked the door and wouldn't let me in because I didn't actually vote on it. No, he invited me to come, but I still missed it. But just to formally.
Well, yeah, and I apologize. Thank you, Commissioner Matlow. You all approved an amendment to the bylaws back in March, but you never actually voted to put Commissioner Matlow on the executive committee, so.
Did you move that?
Yes.
Second. Third.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now we're adjourned.